Elke in round one. Now you're taking on Phil. What is it like to sit across from Phil?
I haven't played too much with Phil, but we've played a few times in the past, and despite his public image sometimes, he's a gentleman, so it should be a good match.
Phil, we heard you have been working on your heads-up game. What steps have you been taking?
Yeah, I've been working hard. I think heads-up is about, math and reading ability, what I call white magic. And so I have pretty good white magic, so I really spent a lot of time learning new tricks, understanding the math, because you have to play with the right math. So I'm very comfortable, and I'm ready to play.
And what do you know about Justin?
Great young player with a lot of talent, who's also like a movie producer these days, which is pretty cool. I think having a lot of different jobs is fun for poker players.
Well, we look forward to it. Good luck. Let's get the cards in the air.
Hi, everyone. Matt Vasgersian alongside Ali Najad for the conclusion of the round of 32. Phil Hellmuth is back at the feature table, the same spot he defeated Mike Sexton in round one. And Ali, he's talking a lot about white magic these days. Is this a marketing ploy, or is there something about the poker brat that's different?
Well, let's call it a little bit of both. We know Phil Hellmuth is always self-promoting. Justin could barely stand to look while Phil went into the whole spiel there.
King 9 for Justin. He has called Phil with pocket ace.
Yes.
And he'll put in a raise to 1,600.
16.
Justin calls the additional 1,000.
Who have you been learning your white magic from?
White magic, you have it or you don't have it.
Flop is 10-7-5.
One over card to the 2-8s.
White magic isn't innate ability?
Yeah. That's what I feel like.
Phil Hellmuth takes down the first pot.
That could have been a big pot if he had ace-7. Would you ask, who did I learn my white magic from? Son, I teach white magic.
Oh, that's not condescending.
No.
No, I mean, that's something that...
It's weird, you always dress in all black. It's black magic.
King 8 suited for Phil.
1,400.
He raises to 1,400 and wins the pot.
Black magic is too much negative context to it. It was funny, Justin. I was trying to explain to people why I do some of the things I do in No Limit Hold'em, and like smart people, and they didn't get it. They didn't understand it. And I said, well, it's because of my reads. And they just didn't. And I was like, how can these really smart, great young players not understand that? And then so I finally said, well, to them, I guess it's just white magic. I thought black magic, and I thought, but I'm not a bad guy.
So since you couldn't explain it somehow, you just started calling it white magic? That's actually pretty funny. I like that.
Doesn't want to call it black magic, but he's got black aces here to raise to 1,600.
Yeah.
And once again, take down the pot. Hellmuth starts the match with 3 straight wins, helping grow his starting stack of 50,000. As we mentioned, blinds at 3 and 600. Phil Staple, No Limit Texas Hold'em is this event's game of choice. Win your opponent's chips and move on. 4 main event champs here: 1976 and 77, 1989, 1996, and 2003.
And in 03, it was Chris Moneymaker that won the main. One of the more chronically underestimated players around, but Doc Sands should get by him. Down in the lower half, I love this Tom Dwan-Doyle Brunson matchup. I like Dwan past him as long as he can get his mind off Macau, where he's been playing those nosebleed cash games.
We'll take you right to Tom Dwan and Doyle Brunson. Of course, Texas Dolly there on your right. Suited Jack 4. We'll put in a raise to 1,600.
Raise to 16.
Tom with Queen 10 calls.
Doyle's never underdressed for this event, is he? I love that he still rocks the blazer and the hat.
Always classes up the room. Ace King 9 on the flop. Tom flops an inside straight draw.
Checks it over to Doyle.
That is 2,200.
Doyle bets 2,200.
Standard attempt to pick up the pot here, which isn't going to prove effective as Dwan is tearing one off.
Turns a 4 of diamonds.
Doyle now with the best hand as he's made a pair.
So check.
Check, check to the river. 7 of diamonds.
$7,600 in the middle, and Dwan's taking an interest in it.
He bet $6,400.
6,400.
And that's a larger than average size bet into this pot on the river. It's almost asking Doyle to excuse himself.
And Doyle with bottom pair makes the call and wins the pot.
You got third forward.
Well, Doyle wouldn't make that call against everybody, but he's playing the player there.
Tom sending a quick text. He just called me with bottom pair and won.
He might be playing open-faced Chinese. You never know.
Back to Justin Smith and Phil Hellmuth. Blinds up to 4 and 800 here.
Justin should ask Phil or Doyle for a hat.
10-9 of clubs. Phil has called. I think the hair is his thing.
Is it windy out?
Here's the flop. 8-king jack. A pair of eights for Justin. Hellmuth picks up a two-way straight draw.
2,000.
And he bets 1,000 after the check. Justin calls. Turn, tray of diamonds. Turn goes check, check. And the river. And Phil makes a straight.
Could have bet the turn as well, but now it's going to be a heavily disguised hand. Phil's checking position on the turn.
Race 7.
Big part of why Justin bet out here. And Hellmuth has made it 9,000 total. Easy fold for Smith. Both by virtue of the fact that he's got just eights with a deuce kicker, and because seldom do we see Hellmuth try to pull off a big river bluff.
What are your plans for poker this year?
Practice, practice, practice.
You going to that Australia World Series thing or what?
Yeah. Going to that? I'm probably going to play a whole week at the Commerce. Usually I just fly in for the main event, you know?
Oh, during the LVC?
Yeah.
2,000.
2,000.
Oh, pocket queens for
Come
Phil.
on.
He might want to broaden his interpretation of white magic to include running great.
Whatever it is, sign me up, Merlin.
Race 5.
And he'll raise to 7,000.
5,000 more for Justin to call.
And again, he folds. Call it what you want, but whatever Phil Hellmuth is doing, it's working. Great matchups from Caesar's Palace as we continue.
Justin Smith.
Phil Hellmuth.
Brian Hastings.
Ellie Lesra.
Gaël Bowman.
Dan Smith. Chris Moneymaker.
David Sands.
Tom Dwan.
Doyle Brooks.
Phil Galfon. Eugene Kachalov.
Joe Sirach. Huckleberry Seed.
Joseph Chung. Bruce Miller.
When Phil Hellmuth won the World Series of Poker main event back in 1989, Justin Smith was still going to bed in a crib. Tonight, they're on slightly more equal footing as they compete in the second round. The winner, as we know, makes the money and gets a little closer to the title. Ali Hellmuth, we're told, has changed his game a bit of late. Is Justin Smith going to be able to adapt to the new poker brat?
Without question, Matt. Justin Smith is an accomplished poker player, and the old adage that age trumps youth in poker no longer applies. Justin Smith has possibly seen just as many hands as Phil Hellmuth over the course of his career. He used to terrorize the nosebleed online games with a mouse in his hand. Now, Phil, of course, has tried to add a few layers to his game as of late, but I don't think it's going to be enough to overcome Justin's big pot approach, and I like Boosted J through to the round of 16.
Would you call him?
Boosted J, that's his online moniker.
Okay, got it. Boosted J with Jack 9 offsuit. He has raised 2,000. Suited Queen 6 for Phil. He makes the call. Check. Flop, deuce, ace, jack. Check me out. Jacks for Boosted J. Club draw for Phil. Check, check.
Check.
Two pair for Justin.
And Phil has yet to put a chip into this pot post-flop, despite having the queen-high flush draw.
And that's still true.
Just check folds it. It's going to be tough to get any chips out of Phil at that pace.
I wish you would have bet a little less. I flopped a flush draw. Big flush draw.
Flopped a flush draw?
Yeah.
Surprise.
Back to Tom Dwan and Doyle Brunson. Blinds up to 4 and 800 here. King Queen for Tom.
Well, 2 paint.
He raises to 1,800. Doyle with Jack 5.
A little 1 paint. Not quite the same.
Doyle makes the call and the flop. 6, 5, 9. Doyle flops bottom pair and quickly checks.
The old no-look check.
Tom checks, and the turn is an ace of diamonds.
Well, Tom certainly could have bet that flop, but he didn't like the texture. And he could have represented the ace here, but he checks again.
And on the river, Tom catches a pair. His queen's now the better hand. Doyle checks.
That's a 3rd check out of Doyle. No reason for Dwan to think queens are no good here.
Dwan bets 2,700.
Again, you see his bets on the river larger than most players. More in the 3/4 to pot size range.
Doyle raises to 9,800.
Wow, look at that check raise from Doyle Brunson. He had bottom pair and just bullied Dwan off the queen. Representing the flush there.
Back to Justin Smith and Phil Hellmuth. Queen 6 of diamonds for Phil. He puts in a raise to 1,800.
A magical raise to 1,800, Matt.
Justin also suited with Queen 10.
He's got Phil's hand in bad shape pre.
And the flop. Both players flop a pair. Smith top pair.
Hellmuth is in even worse shape now. Gonna be tough to get away with a little piece here.
Justin bets out 2,000.
Oh, balk.
Phil puts in a raise to 5.
Looked like he was just going to call. I wonder how Justin's going to feel about that move. You know he picked up on it. Could definitely 3-bet if he wanted to.
Justin just calls.
Well, now he's given control of the betting to Hellmuth.
Oh, abracadabra. Trip 6s for Phil.
Come on. Are there rabbits floating around the set right now? Horseshoes?
Justin is checked.
Oh, out come the shades. He's going to hide just how excited he is about that card.
10,000.
And bets 10,000.
This is a tough spot for Justin Smith. That's more action than we would expect Phil to put in with a hand like Jack 10 or 10-9.
Oh.
Justin calls.
And he needs to be concerned about an even bigger river bet.
Here's the river. Queen of clubs and a full house for Phil.
This is going to make it really difficult for Justin Smith to fold now. Without the queen, if Hellmuth were to bet big enough on the river here, Justin might be able to get away from it. But now, with top 2 pair, I doubt it's going to happen.
Phil bets 18,000.
18,000 into a pot of 33.6.
And he gets a call. Phil Hellmuth takes down a big pot and leaves Justin Smith in bad shape, down to just over 11,000 of the 100,000 in play.
Sick bag to the feature table.
That was dirty. Any idea what I had? Just the worst hand. Think about the worst hand, where it would be the dirtiest.
You could have had, like, kings.
No, the dirtiest.
10s and 8s.
No, queens and 10s.
Oh, yeah, that's dirty.
Justin told me before the match he was going to come out and put the pressure on Phil, play some big pot poker. But to this point, he's been fairly passive, and Phil's holding the deck and a huge chip lead.
The most influential person in my poker career has definitely been Phil Galfond.
Phil Galfond.
My dad.
My brother Robert.
Phil Locke, my boyfriend.
Greg Reimer.
Barry Greenstein.
Nick Schulman.
Isaac Caxton.
Isaac Caxton.
Me.
Daniel Negreanu.
Daniel Negreanu.
Ted Forrest.
Scott Palmer.
Phil Hellmuth and Danny Duke.
Johnny Moss and Chip Reese.
Doyle Brunson. Right about when I was 21, I went up to him and asked for an autograph. This is, I don't know, 82 years ago or something. But he was very humble and gave me his autograph, shook my hand, and that was that.
The 2013 National Heads Up Poker Championship continues the next 3 Saturdays on NBC. Phil Hellmuth, a former champion, the first ever champion of this event, and he has a roughly 8-1 chip advantage over Justin Smith. Smith suited with 10-8 here.
On.
And he's moving all in.
How much is it? Before I look.
A little over 10,000. 11.
11-4 to be exact.
Ooh, I looked at an ace. I don't know if I can fold.
Oh, no spotters.
Before I look.
Wow, aces. I call.
And yes, Phil calls.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Bit of bad timing for Smith, but he's used to that so far in this match.
About 11,000 remaining for Justin Smith, and Phil has 2 aces.
Justin, a sizable pre-flop dog.
Here's the flop.
It's a St. Bernard.
The flop. Deuce, Trey, Queen. 2 diamonds for
Jack
Justin.
makes it more interesting, right? What'd you rather have? I guess you'd rather have a 10 than a jack.
I want a 9.
9?
I think the jack could come on the river, but 9 no.
A 10 or 8 you have.
Or just a diamond, don't even make me sweat it.
There you go.
Here's the turn.
And the turn card. King of diamonds, and Justin hits his flush.
Double up.
He picked a good time to win just his second pot of the match. Gonna need a few more of those.
Back to Tom Dwan and Doyle Brunson. Blind still at 4 and 800 here, and Doyle still in the lead. King 10. Doyle calls. Queen 4 for Tom.
Check.
He will check.
It actually angered him to check.
And both players flop a pair. 10s for Doyle, 4s for Dwan.
Doyle knows how aggressive Dwan is, hence the limp on the button pre.
Tom bets 1,200. Doyle puts in a raise to 3,000.
Well, that's rolling up his shirt sleeves. Not just going to smooth call and let Dwan fire again. He wants to splash a bit here with middle pair.
Tom calls.
Only 1,800 more.
The turn, pairs jacks on the board.
That's going to make it even tougher for Dwan to lay down 4s.
He is checked. And Doyle checks.
And that might feel like Doyle had a draw on the flop and then knuckled behind on the turn.
Well, the river has put 3 of a kind on the board, and unfortunately for Tom, gives both players a full house.
But Dwan's the one betting the river here, 2,000. Such a small bet. Uncharacteristically small. Almost looks like it's begging for a call.
I'm all in.
Whoa!
And Doyle puts Tom all in.
All right, you got it.
And Tom folds.
I think Doyle was trying to make his hand look like a busted draw, like a bluff. No payoff from Dwan, though.
I mean, the kids always think I'm weak when I have aces.
Is that because you think that you make it seem that way, or just because that's your natural?
It might be natural. There are some things I can do.
They probably just misinterpret it.
Yeah.
You're an easy guy to be open to misinterpretation, Phil. Justin making an excellent therapist here.
10-8 for Phil.
Wonder what his hourly is.
Blinds up here to 6 and 1,200.
25.
And Phil raises to 2,500. Ace tray for Justin.
Not the biggest ace on earth, but certainly the type of spot you might think Justin would 3-bet. Try to dig himself out of the hole here.
Instead, he just calls.
More passive play from Justin Smith.
And the flop. 6-Jack-9, open-ended straight draw for Phil.
Check, check.
Quick check, check. Turns a 4 of spades.
Both players have turned a flush draw. Justin with the nut flush draw. Helmies with the open ender and the 10-high flush draw.
2,500.
2,500 to Phil.
He'll double check his holding.
And he calls.
Get it out there.
The river. 7 of clubs, and Phil makes it straight.
And the way Phil called on the turn suggests that he's on some sort of draw.
Come on.
Justin moves all in.
You can't blame him for shipping it.
I call.
All in a call.
Phil calls, and that means he's moving on into the round of 16.
Smith had the right idea.
I mean, I had a lot of hands, by the way.
Oh, really?
Wrong time.
I had aces one time. First I had 8s when you limped in, and I made it 1,000. Then I had aces. I was rooting for you to move in there.
I had no hands. I'll go. Good luck.
So Phil Hellmuth makes the money for the 3rd time in his 7 years playing in this event, and he might learn of his round 16 opponent right now. David Sands all in and drawing slim against Chris Moneymaker.
Here's the turn.
Chris 4-bet Doc all in on this king-high flop.
And here's a queen.
Turns the queen of diamonds.
Doc needs a jack or a queen to chop and stay alive.
And it's a jack on the river. Both players make the same hand, kings and jacks with the queen kicker, and they will chop this pot. Phil Hellmuth won just about every pot on his way to victory. 4 more wins, and he'd become the first ever 2-time champion of this event.
Justin, there was a point where Phil had a full house. Can you take us a little bit through the thought process for you?
I flopped top pair, so I bet, and he raised me, which is it's a reasonable play, and just the sequence of cards that came out was just a little unlucky on my end, but you know, it's pretty normal. Could have maybe folded on the river, but I just didn't feel like it.
Phil, any of that white magic coming into play today?
I don't know. You know, Justin, there weren't many. He played a very interesting game. He limped on the button a lot, which I like, actually. It came down to a hand I was pretty lucky on, and I feel like, you know, maybe some good stuff will happen from here.
On that line of thinking, is this starting to maybe feel like 2005 for you?
I haven't been comfortable in this event since 05. I haven't practiced, and so I show up every year, and I'm an underdog. This is the first year I practice. It's made a huge difference in the way I look at the game, and I'm very comfortable for the first time ever in this tournament. And so I will never make the mistake of not preparing properly for a tournament again in my life. So that's my lesson.
Well, good luck then in the next round. Thank you.
Thank you.
Practice. Somewhere Allen Iverson is smiling. Blinds up, meanwhile, between Tom Dwan and Doyle Brunson to 6 and 1,200. Pocket 7s for Tom. He's put in a raise. King 8 for Doyle. And he makes the call. The flop. 10 king Trey, top pair for Doyle.
And he's going to let Dwan put some more chips in this pot, but Dwan's just checking behind in position with 2 overcards out there on the flop.
6 of hearts on the turn, a flush draw for Tom now. Doyle bets out 3,500.
Tricky spot for Dwan here. His flush draw is not the best, but his 7s don't look terrible.
He calls. And the river. Another king and 3 of a kind for Doyle.
And that's going to make it even tougher for Dwan to go away, depending on how big Doyle bets this river. Doyle could easily have been semi-bluffing on the turn with a flush draw, maybe even a 6.
Doyle bets 8,500.
8,500, even called.
And a quick call from Dwan.
Yeah, that was a pretty tough spot for Dwan to get away from his hand, considering the way it played out.
So Doyle continuing to apply pressure. Meanwhile, Phil Galfond looks poised to take a 2-1 chip lead over Eugene Kachalov on the right. Phil's ace-king suited dominating Eugene's ace-10 suited.
Yeah, Phil doesn't mind having all his chips in the middle in this spot.
And the flop. No hearts, no diamonds, but top pair for Phil.
Flop's top pair.
Eugene needs help on the turn or he'll be drawn dead.
Turns a queen of diamonds. There's some help.
That's not what Galfond wanted to see.
For Eugene.
Kachalov's got 4 outs. All the rest are Phil's.
And
he makes one of his outs.
Moving on.
Eugene Kachalov catches a jack to move on to the round of 16.
Those are the kind of beats that feel like they should come from the guy at risk, not the guy who stands to advance.
Meanwhile, a better than 3-1 chip advantage for Doyle Brunson over Tom Dwan, who has ace-4.
Come on.
Moving all in.
All in.
23-8 total.
Suited king 9 for Doyle.
How much is it, 20?
Ron, 23,800 total.
23,800.
Just about 15 big blinds.
And Doyle calls.
Ace 4.
He's going to take a shot at ending the match right here.
Doyle Brunson. It is Tom who has the best hand now, but is
King 9 suited.
in this match.
Doesn't have to call,
Now the flop.
but it hates to fold.
Here's the flop. 4-8 deuce. Dwan flops a pair of fours.
Not looking good for Doyle to end the match on that flop.
Turn.
There's always a turn in river, though.
The turn is the ace of spades, and Tom doubles up.
Take that back.
Tom Dwan will not go away. He's doubled up, and this match is almost back to where it was when it started. As for Phil Galfond, he might have used up all his luck in the round of 64. Eugene Kachalov moves on to the round of 16 for the second straight time. The 2013 National Heads Up Poker Championship is presented by WSOP.com. In the feature table in action, David Doc Sands on the right, and the player who many credit as being among those really beginning the poker revolution, Chris Moneymaker.
Doc lucky to still be seated at this table, considering how far behind he was with King 7 against Chris's King 8.
Chris with Queen 4 here.
Doc ended up chopping that pot, so he's still significantly behind.
3,200.
Moneymaker raises to 3,200.
Keeping the pressure on.
$10-7 for Sands.
If Doc calls, his total pre-flop commitment will be over 10% of the chips he had to start the hand.
All in. He's going to move all in.
I got your pressure right here. And Chris is going to let it go. His raise pre-flop was small enough relative to the re-raise that Doc knows Chris's calling range is very narrow. Gamble, gamble.
While we were gone, Doyle Brunson extended his chip lead over Tom Dwan to roughly 3-2. Tom was 6 tray. Calls.
Check.
Jack tray. Doyle checks. And the flop. 5-ace tray. Both players make a pair. Doyle quickly checks.
He's got Tom out-kicked.
Tom bets 2,400.
He wouldn't mind ending this pot right here. Doesn't look like Doyle's going to comply.
No, Doyle just calls. And the turn. Another tray.
Oh, this is bad news for Tom Dwan.
Doyle with a quick check.
Dwan thinks he just hit the gin card. Little does he know, he's crushed.
Tom bets 6,400.
6,400.
But it is a really textured board with the spades and the wheel.
I'm all in.
Doyle's going to put them all in. And Tom quickly calls.
Reluctantly.
Wow.
And he's one step closer to the exit.
What do I have? 8, 15, 14. 14 chops, 3 wins. That's not that bad.
Dwan couldn't fold, but he didn't love calling.
The river, 5 of diamonds, and a chop.
River to the rescue for Dwan. New lease on life.
I was pretty tilted when you had the jack with it. If you have like the 8 with it or something, it's bad enough, you know, but then I got a lot of outs. The jack was brutal.
Yeah.
Doyle understated and perfectly on point. Back over at the feature table, meanwhile, we get a look at David Sands, who clearly understands the role his opponent played in the meteoric rise of poker.
I have an immense amount of respect for Chris Moneymaker because of what he's done for poker, not necessarily because of his skill level on the felt. He had a wonderful run in the 2003 main event in the World Series and basically showed the world that amateurs can win in poker. I obviously make my money playing poker, so the fact that Chris Moneymaker directly and indirectly brought so many people into the game is something I'm grateful for.
Well, that's a refreshing amount of gratitude being expressed there by David Sands. Not everyone in his generation shares that sentiment.
So what you're saying is respecting someone's place in the industry doesn't necessarily mean you fear his current game.
Yep.
A 6 for David.
He has been very aggressive in this match. It's the kind of thing we're used to seeing out of Moneymaker.
32.
Sands puts in a raise to 3,200.
Trying to claw his way back into this match.
King 6 at diamonds for Chris. He will re-raise to 5,500.
Not a huge re-raise.
All in. And Sands moves all in.
Gutsy.
And Moneymaker folds his hand.
Yeah, it must have been a bluff. Show it that long. Good in.
Not a bluff, but certainly lighter than average.
I'm allowed to do that, aren't I? It's not against the rules.
Of course. Not against the rules.
The one-time trailblazer taking some lessons from the next generation. David Sands slowly climbing back into the match.